Hi, welcome to Math Movies with Ms. Feuer-Beck and Ms. Veluti. Today we will be converting measurements using weights and masses and the U.S. standard units of weights and masses. These are the conversions that you'll need to know for the lesson. 1 pound equals 16 ounces. 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. Notice the abbreviations for pounds, ounces, and tons because we're going to use those throughout the lesson. There are two rules that you'll need to remember throughout the lesson. The first rule is that when you're converting a larger unit of weight to a smaller unit of weight, you should multiply. The second rule that you'll need to remember is that when you're converting a smaller unit of weight to a larger unit of weight, you should divide. Let's put these into practice. 80 ounces equals some number of pounds. Well, I need to think to myself, which is a larger unit in comparison, ounces or pounds? Well, in this case, ounces is the smaller unit and pounds is the larger unit because ounces make up pounds. So when I go from a smaller unit to a larger unit, I'll need to divide. I have to divide by 16 because that's how many ounces are in a pound. So I'm going to set up my division over here. I'm going to do 16 into 80. And I know that if I did 10 groups of 16, that would be 160, which is way too big. But half of 10 is 5, and half of 160 is 80. So 5 groups is 80 even. And that's an easy way for me to subtract, and there's 0 remaining. So what that tells me is that 80 ounces equals 5 pounds. Let's look at this example. 3.5 tons, or 3.5 tons, equals some number of pounds. In this case, I know that tons is a larger unit of weight compared to pounds, which is a smaller unit of weight. So in order to figure out how many pounds equals 3.5 tons, I'm going to need to multiply. So I'm going to set this up with multiplication, and I have to multiply by 2,000 because there are 2,000 pounds in 1 ton. Now there's more than one way I can do this, but I'm going to separate out the 3 and do 3 times 2,000, which gives me 6,000. And I can also do the 0.5 times 2,000, which I could also remember that 0.5 is the same thing as 1/2. So I'm really doing a half a group of 2,000, and a half a group of 2,000 is 1,000. So if I put those two numbers together, I add them up, I have 7,000 pounds. In total. Here's a story problem to consider. Ben bought 20 pounds of coffee beans and Julia bought 300 ounces of coffee beans. Who bought more coffee? So I've set up the equation here, a greater than, less than, or equals equation with 20 pounds and 300 ounces. Now there's two ways that we can solve this. We can solve it by converting them both into pounds or solve it by converting them both into ounces. Let's try it both ways. So I'm going to set it up and we're going to solve it in more than one way. 20 pounds. If I want to change 20 pounds into ounces, I have to think to myself, which is the larger unit, pounds or ounces? And I know that ounces is the smaller unit. Pounds are larger. So when I go from pounds to ounces, I'm going to be multiplying by 16. I know that 2 times 16 is 32. And when I put the 0 on or move my decimal place over to the right, now I have 320 ounces. So that tells me that 20 pounds equals 320 ounces. Clearly, 320 is a lot bigger than 300 ounces. So I can already say that 20 pounds is greater than 300 ounces. But let's say you had wanted to solve it the opposite way. Let's say you had said to yourself, some number of pounds equals 300 ounces. And you solved for that. Well, in this case, you would need to go from ounces to pounds. You would need to divide by 16. So you would need to set up the division and solve for that. So I just solved 300 divided by 16, and now I can see that I have a total here of 18 and a remainder of 12. What that means is that 300 ounces equals 18 pounds, and there's a leftover 12, and 12 ounces. So I'm just going to cross out that pounds that was there before. Once again, 18 pounds, 12 ounces is smaller than 20 pounds. 20 pounds is the bigger one. So in the end, the person with 20 pounds of coffee, or 320 ounces of coffee, is Ben, and that means that Ben bought more coffee. I hope you learned a lot about converting weights and masses using the U.S. standard units. Thanks for watching.